That was a barn burner. The Seahawks, congratulations to them over the Rams in the NFC Championship game. And congratulations especially to the one Seahawks player who I know from his year with the 49ers, Sam Darnold. What a game. Outduels Matthew Stafford. And Sam is going to get to go back to Levi's Stadium, where I truly think that he turned his career around, learning under Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan in that 49ers locker room. And the Seattle Seahawks will use the San Francisco 49ers locker room in the Super Bowl against the Patriots. And Sam's locker was over there in the corner. And I don't know if he's going to get the same one in this Super Bowl. I think that would be poetic. But boy, he did, to use a 49ers some allegory from the past, he knocked the monkey off of his back with the performance against the Rams today. For Darnold, 25 of 36, 346 yards, 3 touchdowns. And symbolically, his rating was 127.8, and Matthew Stafford's was 127.6. Look, we could even get these statistics up on the screen. Got it right here. We have the NFL's nice stat web page, so we could get it up here. You could see Matthew Stafford on the left, and you could see Sam Darnold on the right. A rating of 0.2 greater, just a fraction of a point greater. But Sam, I mean, this was the Cooper Kupp revenge game as well. Cooper Kupp, the former Ram, discarded by the Rams. He led them to a Super Bowl with a historic receiving season in 2021. Cooper Kupp was left to free agency when his contract they released him actually, so his contract didn't even expire. Signed with the hometown Seattle Seahawks. He's from Yakima, Washington. And Cooper Kupp caught that pass on 3rd and 8 coming out of the timeout, and then he reached for the first down, and it looked like he might be a little bit short, but he did get there. Kupp 4 catches for 36 yards in his revenge game. Of course, JSN, huge in this one, 10 for 153. I would argue that this game should not have been close. The Seahawks were up by 11 points when Riq Woolen decided to not only drop an interception like Jaquiski Tartt in that 2021 NFC Championship game, Rams 49ers, but then after a dropped interception, decided that it'd be a good idea to taunt the Rams bench. And he drew a personal foul penalty for that. If he had just caught the interception, the taunting penalty would have been enforced against Seattle's offense. But because he dropped the pick, the taunting penalty was an automatic first down for the Rams. And they scored on the very next play. You give Sean McVay a lot of credit for taking advantage of the emotionality of his opponent by throwing against Riq Woolen on the very next snap. But my, oh my, like that, to not only drop the pick, but then to celebrate dropping the pick by taunting the bench, that's like a receiver celebrating a drop. It was absolutely asinine by Riq Woolen, and then he got picked on for the touchdown, and that is what caused this game to be close. I think otherwise the Seahawks end up blowing out the Rams, but winning by multiple scores, because they would have gotten the ball back up 11, and they would have had a chance to turn that into an 18-point advantage. And then at that point, LA was not going to come back in that game. However, it opened the door for the Rams. Nacua scored on the deep ball from Matthew Stafford. I was impressed by LA's ability to run the ball in this football game. I think that's what ultimately was able to keep this game close. The Rams ran for 5.2 yards per carry on 22 carries. And if you look at the Seattle Seahawks run defense, I know that in the preview to this game, we looked at that. Take a look at this. This is the rushing defense breakdown this year in the NFL. Look where Seattle is. They did not allow anything like this on the ground over the course of the season. The Rams saw success against them. No other team did at this level against Seattle. 5.2 per carry. And if you're looking at this from a 49ers perspective, I think that it is a lesson that the 49ers need to make sure they rebuild that run game, which was not overly efficient this year especially when they didn't have George Kittle. But I think that the auxiliary blocking for the 49ers at wide receiver and at tight end without Kittle was not good enough. And I think that on the interior, the Dominic Purdy injury really hurt the 49ers in week 1. Well, actually in the preseason week 2, but in week 1 against the Seahawks when they 49ers played Seattle, Dominic Purdy wasn't himself, and he was there in those combo blocks with Jake Brendel. And I think for a lot of the season, the 49ers didn't have full health on the interior, and they were particularly weak running center to right guard. Very, very low efficiency there. The Rams did that really well against the Seahawks, something that the 49ers couldn't do the week before, especially with all their injuries, limiting the separation abilities downfield. And it all added up to the 49ers not being able to run against Seattle, and most teams weren't able to run, but the Rams were able to run against this defense, which you see here. The Y-axis is run defense, and the Seahawks way, way up there in terms of run defense. The Rams were able to run against them, but Sam Darnold came to save the day. Big picture, I have to say, though, and this is going to go against what a lot of the mainstream media tells you, but I'm not afraid to tell it how it is, because I look at this stuff deeper than just the counting stats. The big picture here is, and this is from the 49ers perspective, since this is a 49ers reaction. Matthew Stafford went into Seattle this year with a fully stocked roster twice, and he lost both times. I don't want to hear any excuses. He had a fully stocked roster, and he lost both times. And he got the benefit of Riq Woolen not only dropping the interception, but also taunting the bench. That's the only reason that Matthew Stafford and the Rams didn't lose by multiple scores in this game. For the 49ers, Brock Purdy went into Seattle this year without his top receiver, without Brandon Ayuk, and also lost George Kittle midstream in that game, and he found a way to win. That is the throw to Jake Tonjes. You're going to have so many people talking about the statistics of this game, and they're going to just go to the raw counting stats, and they're going to try to say, well, Matthew Stafford threw for, what was it, over 330 yards, and he did this, and he did that, and he didn't throw an interception. That kind of stuff does not matter when you compare it to efficiency and actually delivering at the crunch time moment. And today at crunch time, the Rams had a 4th and 4. They're near the goal line, and they were down by 4 points. What was it? 31-27. They were down by 4 points, and Matthew Stafford twice threw incompletions, and twice he decided to target Devin Witherspoon. And I get why you try to target him, because that was the one cornerback who was entrusted with single coverage, but he didn't go after Riq Woolen. He didn't find a way to exploit the Riq Woolen vulnerability like he had exploited earlier in the game. And twice Witherspoon made the play. A top shelf coverage guy for the Seahawks made the play at crunch time. And I remember a crunch time moment in Seattle earlier this year. It's pictured up on the screen. Brock Purdy used his legs when nobody was open, and he found a way to hit Jake Tonjes. He overcame the fact that he didn't have George Kittle, and the 49ers got a win. And the 49ers weren't even at full strength in that game. The Seattle Seahawks, in that one, I think they lost Nick Emanwuri early, but I think that no Ayuk, no Kittle, no Emanwuri, you're playing on relatively even ground. Purdy found a way to get it done, and today Stafford did not. So I don't want to hear about these counting stats for Matthew Stafford. I mean, the MVP voters, they've already submitted their ballots, and they're obsessed with counting stats. Stafford is probably going to win the MVP, and it is not going to be fair, because Drake May has been the better quarterback over the course of this season. Stafford in a Patriots uniform today would have been dead to rights in that windy blizzard in Denver, because it took a quarterback being able to run, and it took a quarterback being able to avoid mistakes to win that game. Game in, game out, especially these big games, Stafford will throw interceptable passes. He's got a terrible bad throw rate. It's the 4th worst in the entire league. He gets away with a lot of these picks because they're dropped, such as today, by Riq Woolen. It reminds me a little bit of the Jaquiski Tartt drop interception in 2021. But the difference today, the reason the Rams did not win, is because Super Sam was on the other side, Sam Darnold, and he's the one that should be getting the attention, and he should be getting the flowers now. The Seattle Seahawks defense struggled to close this game out because of the penalty on Woolen. It would have been a different game without that play. They needed the offense. As soon as the Seahawks took the field in this game with, what was it? I think 4 minutes and change left. They needed a trust Sam Darnold drive. Mike McDonald, the head coach, and Clint Kubiak, the offensive coordinator, needed to put the ball into Sam Darnold's hands, and they needed to trust him to move the ball downfield. It wasn't just going to be run the football and punt it away to the Rams. That would have been a very good setup to lose because the Seahawks defense was extremely gassed by that point. And you will get tired as a defense when you blow a chance to secure a double-digit victory, which they did. The Seahawks did when Reek Woolen dropped that interception and started taunting the Rams bench. So it's no surprise that the Seattle Seahawks were tired by the end of this game. In fact, see how many plays the Rams ran in this game. 58 offensive plays, 65 for the Seahawks. So they were already nearing that 60-play threshold where you can expect exhaustion from a defense. 70 plays and it's over. If an offense can get to 70, well, they can usually do anything. And the Seahawks were chasing the Rams around a lot. They needed to capitalize on those massive, massive juncture plays. And that I keep on pointing at the Reek Woolen play as the one where the Seahawks didn't capitalize. They let the Rams back into this football game. Thank goodness for Seattle that they got the trademark Rams special teams screw up when they muffed the punt. And thank goodness for Seattle that they have this man, number 14, on their football team, because that was a career performance from Sam Darnold. Congratulations to him. He's going to be able to head back to Levi Stadium. He's going to be able to be in that same locker room. Remember the career trajectory of Sam Darnold. Started with the New York Jets as a very high overall draft pick. Disastrous beginning to his tenure in the NFL. He was seeing ghosts. He said he literally saw ghosts. You saw him mouth that. I believe that was against the New England Patriots. Now he's going to have a chance to play the New England Patriots in the Super Bowl. But he had a miserable time in a bad organization with the New York Jets. He was traded away right after Robert Saleh was hired to be the head coach of the Jets back in 2021. Then Sam Darnold went to Carolina, where he split some time with Baker Mayfield. He played better at the end of his tenure with the Carolina Panthers. That was the one season with Carolina or the 2 seasons with Carolina. At the end of 2022, he played a little bit better. And then Sam went to the 49ers on a 1-year deal. And if you talk to Sam Darnold, he will mention his time with Brock Purdy and his time with Kyle Shanahan and his time in the 49ers quarterbacks room with Clay Kubiak. And now Clint Kubiak obviously is with the Seattle Seahawks as his offensive coordinator. But Sam will describe that time as a turnaround in his career when he learned what life was like in a winning organization, how to play winning football as a quarterback. And even though he didn't get a chance to really play in San Francisco, I mean, he did start the one game that didn't mean anything against the Rams of all teams at the end of the season. He left the 49ers with those lessons learned. He went to the Minnesota Vikings, where Minnesota won 14 games in his 1 year there. And I think the Vikings should feel really, really stupid right now that they let Sam Darnold out of the building, because J.J. McCarthy is not close to the player that Sam Darnold is. And it's very likely, in fact, because people take quarterback play for granted. I don't take it for granted. I realize how hard this is. It's extremely unlikely that J.J. McCarthy is ever able to do what Sam Darnold accomplished, not just today, but this whole season for the Seattle Seahawks. It is not easy to step in and be as efficient of a quarterback as Sam Darnold was, especially today against the Rams, who haven't been playing great defense for the last month and a half, but it took Darnold walking an absolute tightrope today. I counted only one bad throw from Sam. I think if he had Zach Charbonnet, who is his top running back alongside Kenneth Walker, Charbonnet tore his ACL against the 49ers. I think if Charbonnet had been available, this game isn't close, because there was a third down outlet pass that Darnold threw to the backup running back, Holani, who was in there instead of Charbonnet. That was just dropped. And I think if Charbonnet was in this game, that would have been a catch. That would have been a first down. It would have been a big game, and the Rams wouldn't have been in it. But Darnold was able to overcome that. He was obviously able to walk the tightrope to overcome the dropped interception. 25 of 36 for 346 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions in a game like today. That is big time from Sam Darnold. And he put the ball on the money when he needed to. Those third downs were huge for the Seattle Seahawks. Cooper Kupp coming across right to left, game on the line. Darnold put that ball in the money. Again, only 4 catches for Kupp, but the fact that he was able to beat his former team, convert those crazy third downs that the Rams needed to, that the Seahawks needed to convert to beat the Rams in this game, Cooper Kupp deserves a lot of love as well. And, Sean McVay, maybe he should go back and fire his special teams coordinator again. Maybe that would change the outcome for Sean McVay. I talked to a lot of people in the 49ers building after the Rams screwed up on special teams against the Seahawks in December. And they fired their special teams coordinator after that game. Because if you remember, the Rams were up 16 points in the fourth quarter. And then Rashid Shaheed returned a punt for a touchdown. And the Rams, who have one of the worst special teams units in football, the Rams, they were like, well, our offense and our defense are fine, even though I don't think the defense is fine. And I think that Stafford has some of his limitations. But the Rams wanted to blame it on their special teams unit. Fair enough. I mean, it ranked very poorly, and they gave up the punt return for a touchdown. But I asked some people, will the Rams firing their special teams coordinator 80% of the way through the season make any difference whatsoever? And every single person told me, no, it's way too late for them. Special teams is going to haunt this team for the rest of the year. And we talked about it on this channel. Lo and behold, special teams provided the winning difference for the Seattle Seahawks today. They finished as the number 1 special teams unit in football. The 49ers were number 2. It was a massive difference last week, although the 49ers just ran out of ammo. I know the game wasn't close. San Francisco would have had to walk a tightrope to win in Seattle, but it was over. They fell off the tightrope the second that Rashid Shaheed took back the opening kickoff for a touchdown. The 49ers' pathway to victory was dead. In this game against for the Seahawks against the Rams, it was the muffed punt for LA, which was just the latest in a parade of embarrassing special teams miscues that set up Seattle for the touchdown that put them up 11, and they ended up winning this game by 4 points. So, I mean, you could do the math. They scored 7 points. They shouldn't have scored, and they won by 4. Special teams indeed did the Rams in, and the people who answered my question in that 49ers locker room were indeed correct. But this was a barn burner. I think that the biggest context here is that the NFC West was epic this year, and the Seahawks are going to be favored in the Super Bowl. The Seahawks are favored by 3.5 points against the Patriots. That's going to be held at Levi Stadium. The over-under is 46.5. And Sam Darnold is going to get to return to San Francisco's locker room. And maybe he'll get that same locker. I think it'd be really cool if they arrange for him to get that locker in the corner over by the snack room in the 49ers locker room. It shows you that QB rehab project in San Francisco is a real thing. Maybe we'll see Mac Jones with big-time success somewhere else, because the 49ers have a quarterback factory that has definitely yielded great results. I mean, the 49ers, when Purdy had his chance against Sam Darnold with a fully stocked roster back at the start of this season, it was Purdy who came out on top. And I'm sure they're going to go to battle in this division many, many more times. But credit to Sam for getting the job done in the NFC Championship game. Mike, our producer, texts me right now. He says, I can't wait for Mac Jones to sign with the Rams in 2027. Going to be fun stuff. We could see Matthew Stafford be succeeded by Mac Jones in LA, and then we'll get to see Purdy against Jones, and we're going to get to see Purdy against Darnold, and it'll essentially be the 49ers QB rehab project taking over the entire NFC West. Sounds like something we got to tweet about as soon as I leave this live. Mike says that McVay should also get some blame. I agree. I think that McVay was yelling into his play sheet after the 4th down where Stafford forced the ball to the tight end, who was covered by Witherspoon, who's one of the best corners in the game. I don't know if he was yelling at Matthew Stafford for forcing the ball in to 21's coverage instead of 27, Woolen, who obviously was the more compromised player in this game, or I don't know if Sean McVay was yelling at himself for not setting his quarterback up for the best possible success. But the truth of the matter is that Matthew Stafford was unable to go into Seattle and win, despite the fact that his team ran the football with blistering efficiency. As soon as I saw the Rams running the football as well as they did today, and here are the full stats of this game. 114 yards on the ground, 5.2 per carry for the Rams. When I saw that, it was like, how are they going to lose this game? And the answer was Sam Darnold was going to be fantastic on the other end, and the Seahawks were going to get the special teams break that we've seen the Rams consistently give their opponents this year. It's exactly what happened. I mean, Puka Nacua went crazy. They couldn't cover him. 9 catches, 165 yards. Devontae Adams, 4 for 89. Both of those guys had big games, and that's predictable when they had the rushing attack working the way that it did. The Seahawks basically only generated pressure on 20 to 25% of snaps because of that run game. It diffused the pass rush of Seattle. Against the 49ers the week before, because San Francisco couldn't run the ball, it was over a 50% pressure rate generated by Seattle. So Matthew Stafford had time. He had guys getting open in Nacua and in Devontae Adams downfield. I mean, this was set up for the Rams to be able to win. The problem, though, is that the special teams wasn't there for the Rams, and the crunch time play, which we saw on that 4th and 4 late in the game, was not executed. And whether it's McVay's fault or it's Stafford's fault, I don't know. But what I do know is that counting stats like Matthew Stafford's 374 yards in this game do not matter when you cannot deliver in the clutch. And I really, really hope that the mainstream media, which just loves sitting there and slobbering over 300-yard Matthew Stafford performances, actually starts to take context into account, stops being lazy, starts taking context into account. This is a guy who would not have won a Super Bowl in 2021 without Jaquiski Tartt dropping an interception in center field, without Aaron Donald on his team. I mean, if you're going to accuse somebody like Brock Purdy or somebody like Sam Darnold of being a system quarterback, then Sam Darnold needs to get that criticism times 2, because the system that he operates in has a lot more going for it than the systems that the 49ers and the Seahawks respectively have had going. I mean, the Rams with that run game today and those wideouts today, for them to not be able to come away with a victory, not good for the Rams. Like they had the ability to space out Seattle's defense, and they were not able to get it done on the road. And, you know, people asking, why do you hate Stafford so much? I just hate the coverage so much. I think he's a decent quarterback, but I think that there is biased coverage in the NFL of different QBs. And I'm just here to bring it back to the middle. I'm here to bring it into the wheelhouse where everything is fair. You can't call some guys who don't even have a run game and don't have wide receiver separation at their benefit system quarterbacks if they're creating everything. That just isn't true. While calling the guys who have everything at their disposals, because Matthew Stafford has had Megatron with the Detroit Lions. He's had an Aaron Donald defense. He's had Sean McVay as his play caller. He's had a top 5 run game this year. He's had Puka Nacua at all-pro status. He's had Devontae Adams. He's had multiple tight ends. You can't call that guy a system-carrying quarterback. That is a system quarterback. He's not carrying the system. He's a product of the system. So, yeah, I think that he manages things decently well, except for when he throws the picks that should be caught but are dropped. I think he has tremendous dropped interception luck, but he needs to be treated along the same standard as a Brock Purdy and a Sam Darnold. We need to get realistic about who Matthew Stafford actually is. And if he was who the media thinks he is, the mainstream media thinks he is, I think they're going to vote him. I think they have voted him the MVP. We're not going to find out for another week and a half or so at the Palace of Fine Arts at the NFL honors here in San Francisco. But if Matthew Stafford was truly who the media crowns him to be, there is no way that the Rams would have lost that football game. They also were very, very close to getting blown out of the water there. It was the dropped interception by Reek Woolen that set the Rams up to make it a game late. Dropped interception, taunting penalty. I thought that was one of the more ridiculous plays that I've ever seen. Again, no wide receiver would ever celebrate a drop. Why is a cornerback celebrating a dropped interception? That's beyond me. I mean, you can argue that it shouldn't have been taunting, that guys do more on every play. Why is that guy mouthing off after dropping a pick that could have essentially sealed a double-digit win for the Seahawks? Because the Rams defense was getting cooked in this game. Sam Darnold, again, 346 yards at 9.6 per attempt, and that was without a great rushing performance. They were at 2.9 per carry, K9, 19 for 62 yards. Sam Darnold was making it work downfield, and I think that had Seattle been able to get the ball back up 11, it would have been over. It would have been curtains at that point in the game. Instead, the Rams were able to get back into things. Anyway, let's talk about this Super Bowl matchup. It is going to be the Seahawks against the Patriots. We can get the NFL team tier chart ready for the Super Bowl. This is going to be fun. It's going to be here in the Bay Area. I'm sure that we'll have plenty to feature here for the Bay Area. All my content has featured San Francisco and the Bay Area. It's going to be exciting to welcome these two teams into the region for the Super Bowl. Sam Darnold's going to go back home, what was home for a year in 2023, into his old locker room. I have the team tier chart ready here. Maybe we should include some of the postseason. I don't think that they'll have the conference championship game included yet, but at least we can do our best to include the divisional round. So I am screenshotting this. The Seahawks were favored today, and it's going to be interesting because you're going to see on this team tier chart that I've just put up on the screen that Seattle is actually in a worse spot than the Rams. The offense not as good as the Rams over the course of the season, but the defense much better for Seattle. That obviously I don't think was on the fullest display today, especially with Reek Woolen dropped interception and the penalty. But the Seahawks special teams is not on this table, right? It's an XY axis for offense on the X and defense on the Y axis. Special teams is the third dimension, and that's where Seattle blew the Rams out of the water in both of those victories up in the Pacific Northwest. And it was the difference in this game as well. So, I mean, Seattle's a borderline tier 1 team, offense and defense combined. The Rams are a tier 1 team, offense and defense combined. The thing about the Patriots is I think they're going to be more competent on special teams than the Rams, and you could see where New England is. The Patriots are in the same spot in terms of an offense-defense efficiency combination as the Rams. So the NFC West has flexed big time up until this point. We'll see if it can continue flexing to win a Super Bowl. Now, the best possible outcome for the 49ers, if you're watching this through their lens, is that the Seahawks lose the Super Bowl. Because as we have seen from experience covering the 49ers, losing a Super Bowl is a devastating proposition for the psyche of a team heading into the next year because you have to start over. I mean, even if you win, you have to start over, right? It's square one. If you think that anything has been earned in the subsequent season, you're going to get lapped by the rest of the league. This is a very, very competitive situation. But I think it's so much easier to start over when you have some wind at your sails, and there's nothing that deflates a franchise emotionally, psychologically more than a Super Bowl loss. So if you're a 49ers fan and you want an easier NFC West road in 2026 where the 49ers are already going to have a third place schedule, then you want the Seattle Seahawks to lose this Super Bowl. I think it's as simple as that. You want the AFC team to win, and the Seahawks have to come into 2026 in a Super Bowl hangover type of year. I think they could still enter on a Super Bowl hangover even if they win. But I think just if you talk to guys, the psychological impact of losing this final game, especially since you have to play essentially into mid-February if you reach the Super Bowl, that psychological impact is very, very damaging. That being said, it is Seattle favored by 3.5 over New England. Yes, we're going to hear several times, hundreds of times, thousands of times over the course of this week about Pete Carroll and Darrell Bevel, the offensive coordinator of the Seahawks in that 2014 season, not handing the ball off to Marshawn Lynch. And obviously we saw the big interception by Malcolm Butler of the New England Patriots playing that little slot cornerback position. That was a Super Bowl that was held in Arizona at another NFC West team's facility. Well, this time it's going to be at Levi Stadium, and we could see if Seattle exacts revenge for that with Sam Darnold now their quarterback and not Russell Wilson. As Mike points out, I'm going to go through some of the comments right now, but Mike is saying that Stafford has 2 elite wide receivers. He does. He has 2 elite wide receivers. He had a great offensive line. He had a top 5 run game. He had a top 5 defense, and he failed to make the Super Bowl this year. I think he would have failed to make the Super Bowl in 2021 had Jaquiski Tart held on to the easiest interception chance of his life. Sometimes it is better to be lucky than good. I agree, but also it's better than anything to be realistic. And in the case of Matthew Stafford, I think a dose of realism is very, very necessary after this game. Seattle came in playing red hot defense. The Rams were able to diffuse some of that with their very, very balanced offense, but the Rams are not a fully balanced team. That special teams unit, which already fired its coordinator earlier this year after a loss to Seattle, was never able to right the ship. And when you look at how well Seattle was able to round things out this year, some days the defense is not going to be at its best. That was today. They looked exhausted, understandably, down the stretch after they couldn't close the door. Their special teams and especially their offense and their quarterback, Sam Darnold, took them the distance. And congratulations to Sam for getting the job done. As far as a early Super Bowl prediction, man, it's tough because I think Seattle's special teams really is a difference maker. I think New England's going to get them. I'm gonna go out on a limb and I'm gonna say early on, I reserve the right to change my prediction before the game happens in 2 weeks at Levi Stadium, and I'll be covering it. But I think that Drake May, I have a lot of respect for what he was able to do today in Denver. In fact, we even have a video from the Buccaneer, which is, it's funny. The Buccaneer is the New England Patriots bar, and Tom Brady played for the Buccaneers after he played for the Patriots. So maybe it's a perfect Tom Brady bar. But I have video from it, and I'm going to send it over to my computer right now so we can congratulate the Patriots for their big win. This was the interception of Jarrett Stidham late in the game that earned New England the victory. It's going to take about 10 seconds or so to airdrop over to the computer, and then we could put it up on the screen and watch. So New England people are going to be coming into the Bay Area. Hopefully they bring some good lobster rolls. Actually, don't bring the lobster rolls with you. I'm sure those don't age well, but if you want to get good lobster rolls, you can go to Woodhouse Fish Company. It's my favorite spot in San Francisco. And Seattle people are going to be coming to the Bay Area. Yes, you could seafood for both. Like, they're good salmon up in the Pacific Northwest, right? So I love my Lox bagels up in Seattle. I would say maybe the best spot to get one of those is Boychik Bagels in several locations, but there's one in Pacific Heights. Anyway, I've got video right here of, this is the Buccaneer. This is the bar where the Patriots fans gathered today to see their big win, to punch a ticket to the Super Bowl in San Francisco. This is good. In 2005, a new pope was elected. The Seahawks won 13 games and advanced to the Super Bowl. In 2013, a new pope was elected. The Seahawks won 13 games and advanced to the Super Bowl. Here in 2025, a new pope was elected. The Seahawks won 13 games and made it to the Super Bowl. Coincidence? I think not. I think 3 times is damn crazy. Now, the Seahawks are not guaranteed to win the Super Bowl in a year where a new pope is elected. They're only guaranteed to get there. In 2005, they lost the Super Bowl. In 2013, they won it. And here in 2025, the Seahawks, TBD, in that Super Bowl, they get to play in their rival's home stadium. But that was a fun NFC championship game. Mike feeding me with all the good information. I think that Drake May today, he needed to use his legs to win that game in Denver. I think that his legs, because there was so much snow and wind and just horrific conditions, you aren't going to win throwing the ball down the stretch of that game. They won with 88 passing yards from Drake May, but he knew when to run, and his legs ended up sealing the deal for the Patriots. It's going to be a big deal against the Seahawks. Now, one thing that Brock Purdy was able to do against Seattle, despite not having anybody to help him because all the 49ers were hurt, he was able to run a little bit behind the line of scrimmage. He extended some plays. He put on his Superman cape, and it made, some of those plays semi-interesting, even though the 49ers had zero separation downfield. May is not as fast as Purdy, but he's got the wit and the mobility to extend some plays and make things interesting. And I think that's going to be really, really important against the Seattle defense that's going to have a couple weeks to rest and prepare for this football game. Then it's going to be what can you do to slow down Sam Darnold kind of game. The Rams, they have not been a great defense, I would say, ever since around that, maybe even before that first Seahawks game. We talk about top 5 defense for the Rams on the season, but they were leaking oil defensively. We saw it against the Carolina Panthers. That was a big, big issue. Carolina put up 30 plus, 34-31 against the Rams. Last week against the Bears, that was a tough game to gauge because that was played in horrific conditions at Soldier Field, and it was one of those Caleb Williams barn burners, and the Rams got a couple breaks. They were able to win that game, but we couldn't really tell where exactly that defense was. This week, good conditions in Seattle. They got absolutely roasted by a Seattle Seahawks offense that, I have to say, had not been great over the stretch run. It was a question of who had struggled more over the course of the past 2 months, the Rams defense or the Seahawks offense, and the Seahawks won that battle resoundingly in this game with how well they were able to fire, and that was all a big credit to Mr. Sam Darnold himself. Now, the question is, I think the Patriots, that's a team that's playing good football. Everybody's going to give them a hard time for being a team that hadn't played a particularly hard schedule, but you can only beat the opponents that are put out in front of you. And I think going on the road in the snow, regardless of whether or not there's a backup quarterback on the other side, is not an easy proposition, especially since Denver scored first in this game. There was a deep pass from Jarrett Stidham to Amarius Mims Jr. downfield, and then he hit Cortland Sutton on that touchdown. So New England had to fight their way out of a 7-0 hole. They're able to win that game 10-7. Credit to them. And, I could go back to the team tier chart. New England has performed admirably this year. It's a high-powered offense. It's a really good defense. And if you can find a way to just hold serve with Seattle on special teams, you will have a chance to win the game at Levi's. Now, it's probably still a little bit too early to look at the weather forecast. That could factor in. We will hope for dry weather. We'll hope for decently warm weather here in the Bay Area for the Super Bowl so that it's as entertaining of a game as possible. I really hate when things are too bogged down with precipitation, but I do believe that this is going to be a fun Super Bowl to watch. The Seahawks are favored because analytically they and the Rams were the two best all-around teams in football this year, even with the Rams' special teams deficiencies. But I think that New England brings a solid resume as well. And I have to say this, the Minnesota Vikings have got to feel really stupid for letting Sam Darnold go. The Tennessee Titans have to feel like complete idiots for the way that they treated Mike Vrabel. He leaves the Titans, and then in his first year of a new job, he's fired by the Titans. Let's put it that way. He didn't just leave him on his own volition. His first season, new job, Mike Vrabel takes his new team all the way to the Super Bowl. This is why I warned Robert Saleh on this show. I didn't warn him in person, but on this show, I was like, I don't know, Tennessee, that might be a toxic franchise. Might be a place where they don't treat people all too well. Might be a place where they throw you under the bus, even if it's not your fault. It wasn't Mike Vrabel's fault that the Tennessee Titans couldn't get over the hump. I think it was very clearly the fault of the larger organizational structure there. Anyway, bad ownership decided to blame it on Vrabel. And Rand Carthon, the 49ers former personnel executive who came in there to be the GM at the end of Vrabel's tenure, he didn't have a chance either. He was fired a year later. Nobody got a chance in Tennessee. And now the guy who was running the ship as the head coach has made his way all the way to the Super Bowl and has won an AFC championship with Mike Vrabel. Robert Saleh now has to step into that toxic situation, and maybe he's got enough of a personality, maybe he has enough knowledge as a head coach who's already been in one toxic situation with the New York Jets to fix it, but I wouldn't hold my breath. It's a really, really tough position for Robert Saleh to be in, and probably an example of why one should be choosy when deciding where they want to be a head coach. It's going to be tough to undo what has been a really, really rough time. Now, I will say that spots like the 49ers, that was not a good situation back in 2014 to 2016, from the end of Harbaugh through who was after Harbaugh? I'm blanking on his name. Jim Tom Sula to Chip Kelly, but Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch came back in and made sure to restore order in 2017. They've got the 49ers back in contention. It's going to be a fun offseason for them, but first they're going to watch the Super Bowl between the New England Patriots and the Seattle Seahawks after a fantastic NFC Championship game between the Seahawks and the Rams. Anyway, that is your instant reaction. We're almost at 100,000. Everybody make sure that you hit that subscribe button. Where are we at right now? We are at 99,905. Good stuff. So we're less than 100 away from 100K. Look forward to your subscription as we make it to 100,000 real subscribers. Want to become the first 49ers channel at that threshold. Everybody, thanks for watching. We'll talk to you very soon.